Welcome to the Calder Farmstead, your place for news, analysis, and shenanigans from the American Hockey League.
Face off one by the Condors, Jones, top, another point, fence into the slot, a shot is gone! Josh Perry, in double,
left point, long drive, save, Kinetic, what a stop by Matisse with the left pad! Oh, there was a scramble in front of the net, denied was Matt Schicker by a miraculous piece of net binding by Matisse Kinetic.
D-laner from the red line sends it in, Hofer into his net, he stops it, Hofer looking, Hofer firing toward the empty net, he scores! Are you kidding me? Joel Hofer, a goalie goal in the Calder Cup Playoffs!
And now, with 9 minutes gone in overtime, the Bears breaking out. Right side with Fair. Brooks Light cutting to the net. Fair and let's go! He scored! He scored! It's over!
Hello, hello, hello from Bakersfield, California.
And Chicago, Illinois.
Welcome to the Calder Farmstead podcast, episode number 137 for Wednesday, April 19th, 2023. If you were hoping for a podcast featuring a guide to the new features in HBO's Farming Simulator 2023, we are not going to be much help. This is an American Hockey League podcast. My name is Sean O'Brien from StatsTrack and the AHL's only league-wide analytics guy.
And I'm Sarah Avampato from Full Press Hockey and SB Nation's Canes Country.
As always, we thank you for tuning in with us. If you're new to hearing Sarah and I talk about hockey, we're going to break down the first round and only the first round of the AHL's 2023 Calder Cup Playoffs in the Western Conference. We both watch a lot of AHL games. We're going to talk about what we see when we watch the film, as well as use some advanced stats to help us break it down. If that's new to you, you may want to head over to our podcast feed or YouTube channel, wherever you're checking us out from, and check out episode 0. It's a short primer on some of the stats we're going to be talking about, as well as how we view what's important on the ice. So if you're new to some of the more advanced hockey stats terms like PDO or the point shares model, or newer hockey terms like controlled zone entries or Royal Road, go check that out, so you better be able to pick up what we're putting down. Promise it's not that nerdy or technical. It's only 20 minutes, and let's be honest, you wasted 20 minutes thinking that the Department of Player Safety was going to punish Matt Dumba. You'll never get that time back, so next time, why not spend a little more time with us talking hockey? Sarah, not a whole lot happened since the last time we recorded. It's only been, I don't know what, like 15 hours?
Right, like at most, yeah.
Yeah, it's not been very long. So let's get right into it. We'll go right into the playoffs. We're going to start in the Central and then move our way to the Pacific. Let's start with the Iowa Wild and the Rockford IceHogs. Their game series is best of 3. First game is today when this podcast comes out, Wednesday, April 19th at 8 p.m. at Rockford. Game 2 is Friday, April 21st, 8 p.m. at Iowa. And Sunday, April 23rd, if necessary, is Game 3, 8 p.m. at Iowa. So Rockford getting the rare Western Conference first round home playoff game because, logic. But all games at 8 p.m., it's a 1-2 format. I will start us off here and talk about the Iowa Wild and how they got here. Their season record was 34 wins, 38 losses. They went 5-5 down the stretch. Their net power play was 15.2%. That was 22nd in the AHL. Their net penalty kill was 79.3%, 30th in the AHL. If the Iowa Wild win this series, it's going to be because Marco Rossi, Sammy Walker, and Nick Batan lead the way. It almost goes without saying, in the playoffs, you need your best players to be your best players. Iowa doesn't have amazing scoring depth and instead has relied on Rossi, Walker, and Batan to carry the offensive load for most of the season. While a small sample size, the Wild were 1-6 this season in games where 2 of Batan, Rossi, and Walker played but didn't score. They were 26-23 in games where at least 2 of them played and at least 1 of them scored. So their offense matters to the success or fail of this team. And yes, Rockford is obviously going to focus its defense to stopping those 3, but it doesn't make it any less important to the Wild's chances to win. If the Wild's best forwards don't get on the score sheet and it's up to their depth scoring to carry the day, Rockford very likely is going to win this series. If Iowa wins, it's because they were physical and stayed out of the box. Surprisingly, Iowa wasn't one of the more penalized teams this season, a trend that usually is played in their or not in their favor, a trend that's been reversed from previous years, we'll say. They ranked 15th in penalty kills per game with a penalty differential that also ranked 15th. They've gotten exactly neutral officiating this season overall, I guess we'll say. They've always been a rough and tumble kind of team under Tim Army, and I don't expect that to change. They do need to make sure they stay out of the box, though, as their penalty kill is atrocious, and while the Rockford power play numbers aren't good, a lot of that can be attributed to the rotating door of roster changes they underwent all season with Chicago. Now that the gang is all there, I wouldn't want to put that power play to the test. Finishing checks and being physical will be important for Iowa, though. A lot of Rockford's key players are undersized, and physicality might throw them off their game. Rocco Grimaldi is listed at 5'6", 179 pounds. David Gust is 5'10", 176. Luke Philp is 5'10", 181. Brent Senni is 5'7", 157 pounds, and Lucas Reichel is 6 foot, but still only 170 pounds. I am bigger than almost all of them. I think there's a good chance those guys don't respond well to an increased intensity in physical play. So if I'm Iowa, I'm finishing my check every time those guys have the puck. Those are their two big keys to the series. Their stars lead the way. They're physical, but stay out of the box. Sarah, talk to me about the other side. What does Rockford have to offer here? How did they get here?
So Rockford this season, they went 35-37. They were an even 5-5 over their last 10 games of the regular season. Special teams, not impressive. The net power play was 12.3%, good for 30th in the AHL. Net penalty kill was 80.5%, 26th in the AHL. If Rockford manages to win, it's going to be because they played better defense in critical areas. As we talked about heavily in episode 132 just a month ago, Rockford's defense at the net front and the inner slot areas has basically been appalling. It has absolutely contributed to their goaltending woes, as it's hard to stop pucks when there's an uncovered player at the back door just waiting for a tap-in. Last season, Rockford was much better at defending the net front, and getting guys like Vlasic back from Chicago is hopefully going to help reset the defensive depth chart, allow the IceHogs to play better in front of Soderblom or Khudobin, whoever gets the net. Because if they continue to let teams create scoring chances from the net front, their playoff run is not going to be a long one. If they win, it's also going to be because reinforcements helped rejuvenate their special teams. At the end of the season, they got back Lucas Reichel, Buddy Robinson, Joey Anderson, and Alex Vlasic, all from the NHL. In looking at special teams, Reichel this season for the IceHogs had 5 power play goals. Robinson just had 1, but overall he's a guy who provides a pretty solid net front presence no matter where you're playing him at. Anderson only got 2 games to play with Rockford. He spent most of his time after coming over to Chicago in a trade up in the NHL. But while he was with the Marlies, his stop before this, he did have 6 power play goals in 30 games. Now, Joey Anderson only getting 2 games to find chemistry and a groove on the power play is not ideal, obviously, but you do have to bet on the talent that's here. A first power play unit of perhaps Anderson, Reichel, Philp, Grimaldi, and Vlasic should not be one that struggles. To be fair, in the 2 games that this group has been together, they are 2-6 on the power play. Now, that's just a small sample size, obviously, but at least it's one that gives you hope that the power play is going to be getting better. On top of that, Iowa's penalty kill is not strong, hasn't been strong all season. So if Rockford does get some power play opportunities, they should be able to do some damage, and doing so is going to be key to them being able to pull out this tight series. And if Rockford wins, it's because they win game 1. If they lose game 1 at home, that means they have to win back-to-back games in Iowa. The model projects them as a 24.3% chance to win the series in that scenario. That's still possible, but that is a massive undertaking and not really a likely path to success for the IceHogs. It's going to be much better for their chances to take game 1, put the pressure on back in Iowa. Especially with their roster that is the 5th youngest in the AHL right now. It's probably better for the locker room to be able to play kind of loose in game number 2 in Iowa and not having to sweat every single mistake in a hostile environment with their season on the line. So they got the benefit of that rare home game for the lower seeded team, and they need to take advantage of it.
All right. The X factor for this series is goaltending. Rockford used 5 different goalies this season, but relied most heavily on Arvid Soderblom. who was 15-17 in the regular season. And Soderblom has struggled in comparison with his breakout year last year. He was a finalist at the end of the season for our best goaltender award, although he did not win. But even at the end of the season, it was very back and forth for Soderblom. Would allow 3 goals one game and then would just turn around and allow just 1 the next. Hudobin was reassigned to Rockford and can step in if needed, but I have to imagine that they give the workload to Arvid Soderblom. Iowa fairly evenly split time between veteran Zane McIntyre and rookie Jesper Wallstedt, who looked better as the season went on, but even Wallstedt had struggles and is still a very young goaltender. Even down the stretch, his last 5 starts weren't exactly a model of consistency, allowing 3+ goals in 3 of his last 5 starts. He also has 4 whole games of playoff experience in the SHL and none in North America. So both teams have a young goalie who's shown promise, but has also struggled, paired with a veteran goalie who has more experience, but hasn't been anything great this season. Whoever starts in net for either side, there's a lot of uncertainty in what performance you're going to get for them. So whomever is able to outduel the netminder across from them is going to heavily tip the scales in their team's favor. That is it for the preview portion. It's time to get down to brass tacks and pick who we think is going to win. I'm going to go first. I'm really torn here. Rockford finally has a full complement of reinforcements, but entire 2 games of chemistry to kind of figure it out and so on. Iowa's had their team in place for most of the season with Walker, Patan, and Rossi, but Rockford has defensive problems, but Tim Army loves to play goons way too much. I think at the end of the day, I'm going to take Rockford here, as I think they have enough offense to kind of wallpaper over their problems on defense, but it's razor thin. Iowa winning this series is a very real outcome, but I think I like Rockford just a hair more. They are 50 and a feather. Sarah, how do you see it?
So despite the fact that I've liked Iowa more this season than pretty much any other season in recent memory since I've been covering the AHL, I just don't know how much I believe in them to keep it together and not revert back to those bad habits in this series. You just said Tim Army loves to play goons. That is the Iowa Wild. And I don't know that I trust them to just play hockey. Like you, I think that this is a very thin margin. Rockford very nearly blew it at the end of the season. The Chicago Wolves were 1 point away. Had Rockford lost the 1 game that they played against Chicago, they would not be in the playoffs, and Chicago would. It was very close to Rockford or Iowa really not being in this position. Their goaltending is suspect. It's not an easy pick. Despite that, there were times where Rockford was one of the better teams in this division. I'm picking Rockford. I'm not confident about it. I could easily see this going the other way, but I give them just the slightest little edge.
And that's pretty much how the model sees it too. Rockford is a 51.5% favorite to win the series. So as we are, on the fence and think it's going to be razor close, but are just giving that little pinch to Rockford, the model is right there with us. A 1.5% favorite, or rather a 3-point favorite. Not big at all. That is a tight race there. Let us move on and let's talk about the West Coast, the West Coast, the Pacific Division. It's only one of the playoff series in the Central are starting this week. So imagine that, not starting a second round series before your first round series are finished.
Crazy.
All right, let us move and talk about the Coachella Valley Firebirds and Tucson Roadrunners. Sarah, take it away.
All right, so this is another one of those charming 3-game series where Tucson does not get to have a home game. This series also kicks off tonight, Wednesday, April 19th. Tucson is playing at Coachella Valley, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern time. Game 2, Friday, April 21st, again, at Coachella Valley, same time, 7 p.m. Pacific start. Game 3, if needed, Sunday, April 23rd, again, in Coachella Valley, 3 p.m. Pacific start time. So we've got it. We've got those 3 games all in Coachella Valley, and spoilers, I don't think we're going to need all 3. So we're going to start things out by taking a look at the Coachella Valley Firebirds and figure out how exactly they got here. Their season record, they were 48-24. That was good for second in the AHL. Calgary just edged them out at the end of the season. Over the last 10 games, the Firebirds were 6-4. The net power play was 78.8%, good for 12th in the AHL. The net penalty kill was 86.2, or 6th in the league. If Coachella Valley wins, it's because they managed to shut down Carconi Island. Michael Carconi is the Tucson Roadrunners offense. Yeah, they've got Adam Cracknell, JSD, also had good seasons on the score sheet, but Carconi was involved in 51% and 43% of their points this season. So they weren't exactly out there ripping it up by themselves. They were residents on Carconi Island for the majority of the season. In games where Michael Carconi was not in the lineup, Tucson was 1-6. In games where he did not register a point, Tucson is 4-15. They are 25-21, where he scores at least 1 point. This is a team that is 12 games below 500, and they turn into a winning team if their leading scorer gets on the board, but they're probably the worst team in the AHL when he doesn't. If that does not make it crystal clear that Tucson's fate relies basically entirely on Michael Carconi, I don't know what does. And that means that Coachella Valley needs to focus on keeping him off the score sheet, because if you let him run amok, a historic upset becomes a lot more likely and a lot more hilarious. To be honest, if Coachella Valley wins, it's also because their special teams punish Tucson for taking penalties. Tucson is 22nd in power plays given up in the AHL. Their penalty differential is 19th in the league. Coachella Valley is going to get the chance to score on the power play, as Tucson is more than capable of shooting themselves in the foot with a bad penalty. Coachella Valley has a nasty power play overall, and they just added one Shane Wright. But they can't let these opportunities go unpunished. So their special teams, their power play really needs to take advantage anytime Tucson's in the box.
All right, let's flip it over to the Tucson Roadrunners side and talk about how they got here. They, on the season, were 30 wins, 42 losses. That was 27th in the AHL. They did not roar into the playoffs. Their last 10 games were 3-7. Their net power play was 13.3%. That was 29th in the AHL. Their penalty kill was 81.5% net, and that was 23rd in the AHL. If somehow Tucson pulls off this upset, it will be because the physicality wore down Coachella Valley. The Firebirds aren't a team full of small guys. They're 8th in the AHL in team weight and 15th in height. So a good, physical bunch of dudes. But Tucson is definitely the meaner team of the two here. And while Tucson can 100% not afford to make parades to the penalty box, they need to find the line between being physical and taking a penalty. And that is something they've struggled with pretty much all season. And they need to find themselves on the right side of it if they want to have a prayer in this series. Because they're the more physical team. They have to press that advantage as far as it goes, because it's one of the only ones that you can point to and say, yep, Tucson has the check mark on this side of their ledger. If Tucson wins this series, it's because their depth scorers had themselves a time. Michael Carconi has had a great season, but shockingly, I think Coachella Valley may be aware that he's driving the bus basically by himself. If Tucson wants to pull off this upset, they're going to need to give him some support from the rest of the lineup. Guys like Milos Kellerman, Nathan Smith, Cameron Hebig, we're calling your name here. Those are guys and plenty of others on Tucson's roster. They're going to need to show up on the score sheet and not in the penalty column. The biggest reason, though, if Tucson wins this series is because Ivan Prosvetov stole the show. I'm assuming that Prosvetov is the starter here because he got sent down from Arizona, and, well, I've seen Tyler Parks play. Prosvetov doesn't have any playoff experience as a pro, nor is his resume terribly impressive, nor is the defensive environment in front of him likely to do him any favors. But I cannot imagine a world in which Tucson wins this series and Prosvetov is rocking a 9-10 save percentage or worse. He's going up against the 4th best scoring team in the AHL with the 7th worst defensive environment in front of him. Prosvetov could finish this series with a 940 save percentage, and that still may not be enough to win. But Tucson does not win this series if Prosvetov is anything short of extraordinary. And our X factor for the series is Joey Decord. Last regular season with Charlotte, Joey Decord was one of the best goalies in the AHL. He finished 7th on our best goaltender ballots at our award show. He then went on to nearly cost Charlotte their second round series against Bridgeport and definitely cost Charlotte their series against Springfield. This season, Decord has not been as steady in the regular season, but has still posted respectable numbers. But it's hard to shake off last season's playoffs with Charlotte, where he looked downright unreliable and just shook. Like, the lights looked too bright for Joey Decord last year. That was also his first and only playoff experience as a professional goaltender. Decord doesn't need to be excellent here for Coachella Valley to win this series, but he needs to shake off last season's playoff demons, and otherwise, if he can, and post another, 870 save percentage like he did last year, he could sink the Firebirds here. All right, Sarah, let's get down to brass tacks here. I'll go first. When I first programmed the model for this series and I saw the output, I had to triple check things because I wasn't sure that it was right. And then I started looking more at it, and Coachella Valley is actually missing not an insignificant number of talent right now. Ty Cartier just got called up. They've been missing Podorowski for most of the season. He's not coming back. They have a couple other guys who are, a little bit banged up, or in Seattle. And this is not the Coachella Valley team that we were expecting to see at this point in the season. But I still think they're good enough here. I'm less surprised now that I'm more aware of where their roster is, that the series is picked to be this close. But Tucson is just flat out not a good team. I think they could give Coachella Valley a scare, but I'm still picking Coachella Valley.
Yeah, this was, I went and looked just out of curiosity, when we said that the Roadrunners were 27th in the league, I looked to see what teams were ahead of them that missed out on the playoffs in their own divisions. And it's like Chicago, Bridgeport, Cleveland, Belleville, all teams that were still fighting kind of for spots in the final days of the season. And all of them missed out, and Tucson is here. No offense to the Tucson Roadrunners, but this has to be the biggest mismatch that we are going to see. They have no business really being here in this spot. I hope they enjoy their couple of nights in Palm Springs. I hope they, have scoped out some, I can give them some restaurant recommendations if they need some. There's a really good airplane museum out in Palm Springs if they have some time to kill. There's a lot of golfing, because that's really all they're getting. Coachella Valley absolutely takes this series.
The model, of course, has Coachella Valley as a 58.6% favorite. So I think they are still, let me double check here. They are the biggest favorite of any team in the first round, but still not as wide a margin. But again, like we said, the full power of Coachella Valley is not currently in the valley right now. They are spread out and beat up a little bit, but still they should have enough to get this done. We're going to take a little break here. After the break, we will get to Colorado, Ontario, and Abbotsford, Bakersfield. If you were just here for Iowa, Rockford, Coachella Valley, and or Tucson, thank you for stopping by. Please subscribe wherever you're listening to us from so you get episodes in a timely fashion. It doesn't make a lot of sense to be listening to this playoff preview next week when the series is mostly over. Also, check us out on social media. We have some fun there. Links to all of that and more can be found on our Linktree page at linktr.ee/The Calder Farmstead. We're going to run some ads, pay some bills. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. We are back from break, and we are going to get right into it and talk about the Colorado Eagles and Ontario Reign playoff series that is starting tonight. Game 1, Wednesday, April 19th. It is at Colorado at 9:05 p.m. I believe that is local Mountain or Pacific time, whatever time zones that exist out there. Game 2 is going to be Friday the 21st, again at Colorado at 9:05. Game 3 is Saturday the 22nd at Colorado, once again 9:05 p.m. So a good Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, a pretty normal AHL playing schedule. 3 and 4, not great, but got to do what you got to do. It's the minors here. Let's start with the Colorado Eagles and how they got here. They went 40 wins, 32 losses on the season. That was good for 6th in the entire American Hockey League. Last 10 games, they went 6 and 4. Their power play was 16.6% net power play. That was good for 17th in the AHL. Their net penalty kill was 83.7%, good for 15th in the AHL. If they beat the Ontario Reign, it's because they didn't take bad penalties. Ontario has the best penalty differential in the AHL. Colorado was 22nd. Their PK versus the Reign's power play on paper isn't that big of a mismatch, but it's one of those where you're just playing with fire, especially with former Colorado Eagle TJ Tynan on the other side. And I imagine that Tynan still thinks about getting swept by his former team in the playoffs last season. That series, he put up 1 assist in 3 games after putting up 98 points in the regular season. He also took a bunch of penalties and I believe a misconduct too in game 2 and was clearly frustrated by the Eagles' efforts to contain him. So I'm imagining that there is a revenge mindset here, being one of the best power play guys in the AHL. And if you give him those opportunities, yeah, I think the Eagles should do all they can to avoid that scenario. Second point here, if the Eagles win, because depth scoring comes through. The Eagles seem to have depth scoring that's inconsistent but kind of ebbs and flows. One guy goes cold and another one finds some heat and it all balances out in the end. That approach is a poor one for the playoffs, though, and the Eagles are going to need a lot of their forwards to step up and contribute. Callahan Burke is third on the Eagle in primary points, but he's recently struggled to find his game. He has 0 primary points in the last 11 games, and quite a few of those have been games where he looked like a spectator out on the ice. The last 3 games, he put up a second assist in each, so hopefully that helps him regain some confidence, attack the net more, play better. But he needs to be part of the solution here and not part of the precipitate. Jean-Luc Foudy missed basically the entire month of March and has been a bit slower to get back up to speed. He has 1 primary point in the last 5 games. That's another depth scorer that needs to get going here. Oscar Olesen has missed time as well, but he's been a ghost even when he's in the lineup. Spencer Smallman has been better recently, but a consistent scoring presence on that third line would be really huge to help this Eagles team get over the hump here. Yes, Charles Hudon is great, and that top line can really drive the offense, but in the playoffs, you're going to need the whole team to chip in, and if the Eagles win this series, they're going to do so with depth scoring, making their marks on the score sheet. Sarah, that is what I have for the Colorado Eagles. Take the Ontario side.
So the Reign this season, they were 34-38. That was good for 24th in the AHL. They struggled mightily down the stretch. Their last 10 games, they finally started winning a few. They were 3-7 in their last 10 games this season. Net power play was 16.9% for 15th in the AHL. Net penalty kill was 88.1% or 3rd in the AHL. If the Ontario Reign managed to pull out a win in this series, it is going to be because Jordan Spence helped sort the transition game out. Anytime we've talked about Ontario recently, the biggest piece that's impacted their struggles has been the absence of basically anyone on the blue line who can help drive that transition game. For the most part, Spence is really the only guy who fulfills that role for the team. There's a noticeable difference in the team's ability to do pretty much anything past just dump and chase and hope for the best when Spence is out of the lineup. He also has a big impact on the power play. His work quarterback and power play unit, patrolling the blue line, keeping pucks in, was impressive. Even last year when he was just getting his feet wet as a professional, he adapted very quickly to playing in the AHL and the NHL as well. And they have really missed him and his work for this team on the blue line on special teams. If the Reign don't have anyone to help get those breakout plays started, to get the puck into the zone, then they're going to have a very hard time competing with the Colorado Eagles. If they win, it's also going to be because they made life easier for their goalies. If you have watched the Ontario Reign for like literally any amount of time, you will know that that is basically the opposite of what the Ontario Reign do. Cal Peterson's like early career in the Reign, he was constantly the top of the goalie charts for like shots faced. Just every year, he led the league in shots faced. His numbers looked horrible, but he was also facing like hundreds of shots more than the next guy down. So the Reign have traditionally never made things easy on their goalies. And it's easy to point the finger at Cal Peterson and Matt Villalta as the team has struggled. Peterson was 16-24 on the season, 904 save percentage, 2.88 goals against average. He played 40 games this season. He is 8th in the league in terms of shots faced. He faced 1,204 shots. I believe Dustin Wolf topped that list because he played the most games out of anybody. Yeah. Which was like basically for several years, the like Cal Peterson Memorial Award of you played the most games. Congratulations. Villalta, slightly better numbers. He was 12-10 this season, 910 save percentage, 2.65 goals against average. And like arguably, Villalta should have played more this season. He looked good. He looked to be kind of getting things on the right track after some questionable years. But it's understandable from an organizational perspective that they wanted to do anything that they could to get Cal Peterson back on the right track. Clearly, that hasn't really happened to the extent that they wanted because he is still here, and the Kings traded for Jonas Corposalo instead. So it's easy to look at them and say, well, clearly you have bad goalies. But just looking at Peterson's last 5 games this season, a bulk of the shots that he's facing are coming right in front of him, right on the doorstep, while the range shots are more spread out. The team is routinely getting outshot, and some of that is coming back to what we just talked about with not having anyone to really help them out in transition. If you can't even get the puck into the offensive zone, let alone get it deep, you're not going to be taking many shots overall, or at least not many dangerous ones. The Rangers do not historically do a great job of clearing out that space in front of their goalies and protecting them from having to see too many shots. So if they win, it's going to be because they finally figured out that maybe, just maybe, Cal Peterson wants to have a nice day for once in his life.
And our X factor for the series is star power. Both sides have one guy that leads their team by a significant margin. On the Reign, that's TJ Tynan. On the Eagles, that's Charles Hudon. Both sides have a kind of mixed bag of depth scoring behind them, but it's hard to imagine one side winning the series without their star forward being front and center and leading their team to victory. So it comes down to whose star shines brightest, the blistering shot of Charles Hudon, aka AHL Ovechkin, or the slick playmaking of the 2022 best forward, TJ Tynan. I'm not going to take a guess at who's going to emerge victorious there, but that will be what tips this series in the biggest way, one way or the other, is whose star shines the brightest. Sarah, it's time for picks. I will let you go first. Who are you taking here?
So it hurts me to make this selection. It hurts to take Colorado, but I just don't know that the Reign can pull this off. They have been so inconsistent lately. There is no help coming from the Kings. If this was like last year where they got that first round bye and had maybe even the hope of getting guys back, that didn't end up happening, but there was still the hope that maybe it could. You could see maybe a path forward, but there is no help coming from the AHL or from the NHL. I think that Colorado takes this one. I don't think it's a sweep, but I think Colorado takes it anyway. And then I get to spend a good amount of time pondering the fate of Marco Sturm.
Ooh. I think this is closer than the standing show here. I like Colorado a lot, but part of me feels like an upset just lingering here for some nagging reason. Is TJ Tynan's revenge, quest strong enough? I don't know. I don't think it is. I'm going to go Colorado here, but I'm real hesitant for reasons I just can't quite put my finger on. Like, I want to pick Colorado very easily to just dunk on the Reign, but part of me just has that feeling like this seems too easily lined up for a series that's a lot closer than I think maybe it should be. So like if Ontario pulls this off, I'm going to feel bad, but like, because I can't figure out why I feel that way, I'm going to stick with my head and not my heart. And I'm going to go Colorado here. We're all on the same side here as the model has the Colorado is a 57% flat favorite to win the series. But again, I don't know. I have that weird feeling. I can't explain it, but I'm going to ignore it for now, but I may regret that. Let's move on to the last series that we will be previewing in this episode. That is the Abbotsford Canucks and Bakersfield Condors. Sarah, what's the schedule look like?
So this one, like most of our other series, is a 3-game series, all on the road for Bakersfield. So all 3 games are at Abbotsford. Game 1 is also tonight, Wednesday, April 19th, starting at 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific. Game 2, Friday the 21st, at the same time, 7 p.m. local start. Game 3, Sunday, April 23rd, also 7 p.m. local start. So all hanging out in Canada for a couple days. Looking at the Abbotsford Canucks, their season record, they were 40-32 for 9th in the AHL. Over the last 10 games, they were 5-5. The net power play was 16.7%, good for 16th in the AHL. The net penalty kill was 81.7%, or 22nd in the league. If Abbotsford wins this series, it's going to be because of blue line scoring, aka the Christian Wolanin show. If you watched or listened to last week's show, we talked a lot about Christian Wolanin, who finished the season with 55 points, new career high for him, just won the league's, whatever it's called, award for defenseman. Just put together a career season with the Canucks. Most of his points came from assists. He had 49, which led all defensemen in the league. Of those assists, 24 came on the power play for 4th in the league. Now, I do think there is a lot of noise in there for him. I looked over the last 10 games that he scored in. He had 2 goals and 13 assists. 9 of those 13 assists were secondary assists. So there is some fuzz going on with his totals. Without digging into each of those points, replaying each of those goals, I can't entirely say that those second assists were or were not instrumental in the goal, but it is worth pointing out that a significant number of his points aren't coming in that I set up the immediate goal scorer kind of way. There's a little bit longer of a play that has resulted in the points that he's getting. Regardless, though, he has been instrumental to this team's success. He has been very important to the Canucks blue line. I don't think it's a coincidence that as he started taking off and putting together strong performances, so did the Abbotsford Canucks. He hasn't played an AHL game since mid-February. He was called up to the NHL at that point and has spent some time with Vancouver. So there is a little bit of having to work him back into the lineup, work him back into the rotation, but I think that he has really been a factor in driving the scoring, even if some of his assists might be a little fluffy, let's say. Another reason the Canucks could win this series is because they figure out their special teams. As we indicated earlier, they're not great. Special teams are not their strong point. Missing Wolanin has got to be a huge part of that struggle, though. Again, he was good for 4th in the league for power play assists, despite not playing an AHL game since February, on a team with a net power play that ranked 16th. In the month of April, where Wolanin was not in the lineup, they went 3 for 20, or 15%. Of course, however, here's a story of how the numbers don't always tell you what you thought that they would tell you. Because I looked at the first half of February when Wolanin was still with the team, thinking, oh, there'd be a big difference, and maybe the Canucks power play was actually really good then. No, it wasn't. The Abbotsford went 4 for 30 in that February 1st through 15th stretch when Wolanin was still in the lineup. So that's 13%. So not great. But regardless of the numbers making me be a liar, if the team does get a stretch where things click, they can be dangerous. They have shown that they can score at even strength. They limit goals against. They have 2.33 even strength goals for versus 1.92 goals against. So that's not their problem. If they can figure out either the power play or the penalty kill, I'm not asking for much here. I'm just asking for one of them. If they can figure out at least one of them, I think that's going to give them a big leg up. And finally, if they win, it's because their goaltending comes through. They have right now a tandem of Spencer Martin and Archer Silovs. They've been fine, but they're not players who can have an off night and hope that everything turns out okay anyway. Whoever gets the starts, it's most likely going to be Silovs. He needs to be on his A+ game every night to give this team more of a chance. Spencer Martin has the experience. He has 214 career AHL games, although just 2 AHL playoff games, and those both came last season. Also, despite his lengthy career before this, he's only had 1 ECHL playoff game. So not a particularly large body of work in postseason play. But again, presuming that Silovs gets the starts. This goes hand in hand, though, with what we just talked about in special teams. Your goalie needs to be your best penalty killer. Bakersfield doesn't have the greatest power play, but Abbotsford's penalty kill isn't great either. It's basically the opposite of whatever that like unstoppable force meets immovable object saying is. Like they're both just bad on that. So if Seeloves can step it up even a little bit when his team is down a man, that's going to help Abbotsford get a leg up. And then, they can rely on their even strength scoring to help power them through. Sean, what have you got on Bakersfield? How did they wind up in this situation?
So Bakersfield finished the regular season 37-35. That was 18th in the AHL. Their last 10 games, they did go on a bit of a run there. They went 7-3 down the stretch. Their power play net was 13.8%. That was 25th in the AHL. Their net penalty kill was 85% even. That was 9th in the AHL. If the Bakersfield Condors manage to pull this series out, it'll be because they avoid bad penalties. They were 28th in penalty differential and 26th in power plays given up to the other team. Yes, the Canucks power play wasn't exactly as terrifying as it was, or wasn't exactly terrifying. It was actually pretty much average in the AHL this season. But as we mentioned, they're also missing Christian Wolanin since mid-February, and he's still their leader in power play points. If you look at, Sarah talked about like the immediate before and after he left. I'm going to look at kind of a broader cut that does kind of make Sarah look like less of a liar. Yes. Before Wolanin left, the Canucks had a 19% net power play. After he left, 10.4% net power play. So, almost exactly half. Still, taking penalties kills momentum. It breaks up the rhythm and flow of a team. It kind of puts any momentum they had going right to a halt. This is especially true in the playoffs, in a hostile environment, in a very close series like what the Condors have here. And if the Condors are going to come home to Bakersfield with a series win in their pocket, they're going to need to avoid playing with fire in that giving Abbotsford power plays that aren't necessary. That means guys like Jason Demers, Luke Esposito, and Scottish drinking champion Greg McKegg need to be on their best behaviors or in the press box. If Bakersfield wins this series, it's going to be because they contain Christian Wolanin. As Sarah just glowed up Christian Wolanin, the Eddie Shore winner for the AHL's AHL's most outstanding defenseman. I think is the technical way they phrase that. But he's their leading scorer despite the fact he hasn't played since mid-February. And he's their leading scorer by 5 points as a defenseman, having missed the last 23 games. The Abbotsford Canucks are 11-12 without him in the lineup. In games he played in and scored in, the Canucks are 22-11. Like I mentioned above with how much of an impact he had on the power play, Christian Wolanin is very clearly the straw that stirs the Abbotsford Canucks offensive drink. If Bakersfield wins this series, it's going to be because they kept his impact to a minimum, if not, or managed to erase it entirely. And last but not least, if Bakersfield wins this series, it's because they got solid goaltending from goalies with negligible playoff experience. Calvin Pickard has played 317 games across 11 seasons in the AHL. He has 116 NHL games played. In his entire professional career, he has one playoff start. I want to repeat that because it's just unconscionable. In his 11-season professional career spanning over 400 games, he's been the starting goaltender for a playoff game once. Wow. May 6, 2018, game number 3 of the North Division Finals for Toronto against Syracuse. And it's hard to know what's going through his mind right now. Is he nervous, having basically no experience in the situations where he's the starter? Is he excited and enthused to go out there and show the world what he can do in the playoffs? A bit of both. I know it's likely that him and Rodrigue split the starts, as both have played pretty well down the stretch and both have near identical stats. But Rodrigue also doesn't have a wealth of playoff experience at the professional level. He's only 22, granted, and outside of the farcical division playoffs in the Pacific Division bubble, he's got no professional playoff experience. So how do the Condors goalies stand up to the bright spotlights of playoff hockey, especially playoff hockey on the road in what is going to be a very raucous Abbotsford environment? I don't know, but if the Condors win, they're going to need their goaltending tandem to stand tall. And last but not least, to wrap up our analysis for the series, is the X factor, the one thing that will put its thumb on the scale and tip the scales one way or the other for a team, and that is depth scoring. Neither team has star forwards that can carry them. Yes, Seth Griffith was very good again this season. So was Justin Dowling. Why do I struggle with that? Seth Griffith was tied for 163rd in primary points per game in the AHL. Dowling was tied for 66th. Neither of those marks are indicative of star players that can carry a team through a playoff series. That means both sides need their second, third, and fourth lines to step up. For Bakersfield, that's guys like Lavoie, Bailey, and Benson. For Abbotsford, that's guys like Danila Ice, Atu Ratu, and Kyle Rao. The ability for those guys to win shifts, create opportunities, and most importantly, put goals on the board is going to tip the balance of this series in their team's favor. All right, Sarah. It's a lot of talk. Let's get down to brass tacks. Who are you taking in this series?
So I think in this series, I think Abbotsford deserves a better run than they're going to get. But I think that Bakersfield, a team that has had success all season, even when they weren't looking at their best and they still managed to find ways to win despite that, I think Bakersfield still comes away with this one. But I think it's going to be close the whole time.
There's another close one for me. Abbotsford didn't get the full complement of reinforcements from Vancouver, and should Podkolzin parachute into this series, that could very much swing the balance of things. But for right now, it doesn't seem like that's very likely. Phil DiGiuseppe, not appearing in this film. Apparently, his wife just had a kid, and the Canucks did not want to lose him on waivers. So congrats to him. And I understand waivers at this time of year is a little treacherous for a guy that you like as a depth piece. So should those guys have come into Abbotsford, I think I'd pretty easily take Abbotsford here. They're not, though. And at the end of the day, I think I trust the depth of Bakersfield and Calvin Pickard just a little bit more than the depth on Abbotsford and Arthur Seelovs. I'm going to take Bakersfield here. And once again, the model is on our side, but very, very slightly. Bakersfield is a 51.3% favorite. So again, very, very tight series. There's not a lot separating one from the other here. All right, Sarah, any closing thoughts on the Western Conference first round of the playoffs?
I hope everyone has a good time.
I mean, ideally, I'm hoping my biggest hope is show me playoff environment. Give me full buildings full of loud fans, maybe some, I heard Colorado, I think it is going for the whiteout. I love it when teams do some kind of fun thing like that, something that makes their environment not just feel hostile and full of energy, but unique to them. Like, I come back to it all the time, but that Laval environment last year was terrifying. Yeah. I would be pooping my pants on the bench if I had to be a part of that pregame ceremony against Laval in Laval. So that's what I want to see. Show me atmosphere, guys. Yeah. All right, Sarah, take us home.
Well, that is it for the show today. Thank you so much for watching and or listening to this episode. The Calder Farmstead is a part of the Full Press Radio Network. You can listen to this and several other great hockey, sports, and sports entertainment programs, all at www.fullpresscoverage.com. Just click the podcast drop-down menu in the top right portion of the website and enjoy.
And if you guys are enjoying the Calder Farmstead, please make sure you subscribe so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, if you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or Amazon, please drop us a rating, a review, something like that. If you're watching on YouTube, like the video, comment what you thought of the episode. Doing so really does. It helps other people find the show, and your reviews, we do read them. They help us improve the show. You can also follow the show on social media at Calder Farmstead on Twitter, at the Calder Farmstead on Instagram and Facebook. We have a good time there, and they're not all the same. So you might want to check out all of them. Links to all of that and more can be found on our Linktree page at linktr.ee/The Calder Farmstead. Big thanks to Adrian Drake, who made our theme music. You can find him on social media at AD_dysfunction. That's AD_DYSFUNCTION. So we can make music for you too. Sarah, where can the people find you?
Well, my name is Sarah Avampato. You can find me representing Full Press Hockey on Twitter at Right Said Sarah. That's WRITE Said Sarah with an H. You can check out my writing at Full Press Hockey, where I talk about the Ontario Reign, or at Canes Country, where I talk about the Chicago Wolves. Sean, where can people find you?
I cleverly don't know how to write, so you can't find my writing anywhere, but I am on Twitter at Sean O'Brien 81. That's SeanObrien 81. I'm also on Instagram at Sean O'Brien _81. Instagram, not as active. It's mostly dog pics, although my entire jersey collection is saved as a story on there. So if you want to see how many ridiculous number of hockey jerseys I own, you can go check that out. My Twitter is a personal account that is still mostly hockey related things, but occasionally is chirps about pop culture and the like. You can find all of my stats work, where the model is, all of those graphs you see floating around Twitter with our, Farmstead logo on them. Those are all on my Tableau page at bit.ly/data-dump-and-chase, all lowercase, all one word. Thank you so much for tuning into our fire drill of a Calder Cup playoff preview for the first and small portion of second round. For Sarah Avampato, I am Sean O'Brien. Please dump and chase responsibly.